So listen to this. On the 19th of May 2021, Eberechi Eze was midway through a training session while Gareth Southgate submitted the squad list for the Euros. With just one top-flight season under his belt at nearly 23 years old, it seemed quite a long shot that Eze's name would be on it, but regardless of the odds, back in the locker room, his phone had just buzzed. It was a notice from the FA. He had somehow made the list. However, what defied the odds even more was that, in the time between that moment and the end of the session, with no teammate in close proximity, no contact, Eze's Achilles tendon snapped. No explanation, nothing, it just did. Reports claimed the whole staff was left in a state of panic, players crying in shock, yet they didn't even know of the call-up. Eze was laying down on the physio's table when he asked for his phone and saw the notification. It was a cruel twist that would take 4 years to undo, the kind that would have killed most players, but Eze, it wasn't even the first time it had happened to him. Look, at age 13, Eze was kicked out of Arsenal's academy. It was his childhood club even before he had made the team. It was his only dream, and the day he got released, in his own words, I remember crying in my room for a solid week, my mom telling me that it's going to be okay but not being able to get over it. Then I went to Fulham and I was finally starting to enjoy my football again. But we played Arsenal a few months later, and when I went over to shake their manager's hand, I started welling up. All the feelings came back. Still, that's not what I was talking about. After 3 years at Fulham, then 16, Eze was on Christmas break when they too called him, telling him not to bother coming back once the holiday season was over, and after finishing out the season with Reading, they also sent him away. As he said it, he felt stranded. A scholarship followed at Millwall, but at that point it had taken a toll on him. By 18, he was playing with their reserves when they told him he was not a Millwall player and would never succeed at their club. In fact, that had been the overarching narrative across all those clubs. To them, he was just some street player who thought he could treat their stadiums like any of the cages in South London, and they weren't necessarily wrong. He had never abandoned those cages, and they had made him into the kind of player who'd take a nutmeg over a goal. Those clubs were just wrong to think he couldn't nutmeg any pro who tried to stop him. One way or another, he caved in. Sunderland, Bristol City, Swansea. At this rate, soon there'd be more clubs that had rejected him than clubs that had never given him a chance. It was time to find a real life away from football, and since he didn't like anything at school, even PE was a drag, soon he was preparing to start a part-time job at Tesco when his agent called him with one more trial, one final option: Queen's Park Rangers. He took it. Eze grabbed onto that chance so tight that with 9 goals in his first 14 starts for their reserves, only 8 weeks after the arrival of new first-team manager Ian Holloway, he was suddenly on the squad list, even worse, on the starting 11 for an FA Cup match against Blackburn Rovers. But this is what I was talking about. 15 minutes in, without any major blows, Eze began limping and was subbed out, injured. And the next time he stepped on a pitch was 8 months later in the 4th Division. Without ever getting a proper chance, a scout from Wycombe Wanderers found Eze playing at the under-23 level, waltzing around people, almost scoring at will, and was shocked when they just let him leave on loan without much second thought. In the matter of 2 weeks, he was already putting on their kit, and suddenly he was banging volleys from outside the box, bending them top bins and playing 1-2s with Akinfenwa. By January, Ian Holloway was already running back trying to fix his mistake, cancelling the loan and promising to build their attacking third around Eze, since his team was on the verge of a relegation battle with fewer goals scored than last-place Sunderland. Yet, it just didn't happen. As his teammate James Birch would admit, I would be in training, watching him and thinking, how is this kid not playing every week? And I'm guessing Steve McLaren felt the same, because the moment he took over from Holloway, he handed Eze the number 10 shirt that just 4 years earlier had belonged to Adel Tarabt. And Eze did it. The volleys came back. By October, he was playing for England's under-20s. Rumors of a move to Tottenham had surfaced, and at one point, as a reporter asked him what was different between Holloway and McLaren, while Eze struggled to come up with a polite answer, Matt Ingram walked by them and shouted, "Well, he's actually playing him for a start." Still, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Towards the second half of the season, a period of bad form snowballed into a couple months, as Eze eventually admitted that the criticism he faced on social media had gotten to his head, so much so that by the time the market opened, Tottenham backed out, which hurt especially now that they were coming off of a UCL final, but, well, I'm guessing the summer holidays were enough to clear his head, because he started the next season with a ridiculous solo goal in the opening match, before taking over against Luton with an assist and a 30-yard screamer to seal the win. He was still being deployed in midfield and managing to excel in every stat no matter what. Even with the pandemic coming in to slow him down, he managed to be involved in 33% of his team's goals, being both their top scorer and assist provider with 22 goal contributions in the championship alone. He swept up all 3 of the club's Player of the Year awards, board, fans and player all in agreement that he was the one to watch. He had their director of football, the legendary Les Ferdinand, claiming he could become the best he's ever worked with. And still, once again, no matter how much his manager Mark Warburton tried to talk Tottenham into taking him, they passed. But Crystal Palace didn't. Over-reliant on Wilfried Zaha, and in the midst of turning what was literally the oldest squad in the Premier League into one of the youngest, after finishing their season with the second worst goal tally in the league, Crystal Palace risked everything, making a player that had never stepped foot in the top tier their third most expensive signing ever, QPR's all-time record sale. And after only a couple months starting from the bench, it happened. A stunning free kick on his second ever full 90 set the tone, and by January, he was already going past an entire team to score one of the goals of the season, prompting the Nigerian national team's manager to start calling him every single week. By May, he was running it back from even further down the pitch, gliding past the whole Sheffield United squad once again. But, well, that was the same month of that call-up, of that injury, and even if Eze, without to all expectations, getting back to the pitch within 5 months, when all reports pointed towards 7 to 8 months on the sidelines, he had gone injured right before Hodgson's final match at the club, meaning that by the time he came back, the torch had already been passed down to Patrick Vieira and a lot had changed. Fellow reject Michael Olise had come in as their new star boy, Conor Gallagher had completely taken over the team, and meanwhile Eze, as he'd eventually admit, kept thinking that I'm never going to be able to play at the same level as before. A whole season flew by with only 600 minutes of game time added to his resume, and then the next one, as he was already approaching his 25th birthday, even with the goals coming back. In January, Vieira got it in his head to bench him again, but this time, it just perfectly coincided with a run of 13 games without a win that ultimately cost him his job and allowed Roy Hodgson to come out of retirement, slip Eze back into midfield where Gallagher used to be, not missing even a single minute of the game time that remained in the season, and instantly sending Palace on a run of 10 games with only 2 defeats, putting down 7 goal contributions in the process and somehow still managing to finish as the club's top scorer for the season, finally earning a call-up back to the English national team, finally getting back to where he had left off all those years before. But the most important of all is that throughout this whole process, he and Olise had quickly become one of the most feared duos in the league, just as Zaha moved to Turkey and left his throne vacant. 2023-2024 could have been Crystal Palace's greatest ever season. When I say one of the most feared duos, I'm talking about the kind that created 34 goal-scoring chances for one another in a single league season. Yeah, sounds impressive, doesn't it? Just playing 1-2s, they were able to create almost a goal-scoring chance a game, right? Yeah, except that I left out a little detail. That Eze was injured for most of the first half of the season and Olise for most of the second half, 143 days on the sidelines between them, meaning they only started 9 matches together. 9 matches in which they put down 27 goal contributions between the two. For some perspective, Palace took 21 points from those 9 matches, but out of the 6 in which neither of the two was available, they only took 5 points. Had they managed to maintain the points average they had when both were fit, they'd have finished 3rd place, just 3 points off the title. But had they kept the average they had when neither could play, they'd have finished with 31 points, just above the relegation line. Do you see what I'm saying? Especially in those final 6 games of the season when Olise came back from his injury and they literally went and won all 6, beating Liverpool, Man United, Newcastle and Villa, who finished 4th. Eze was literally scoring bicycle kicks and dribbling keepers. Him and Olise had pundits claiming they could play for any team in the world, so much so that Eze even made it to the Euros. But, well, then Bayern took Olise away and suddenly it was like the training wheels were off. But if anyone doubted Eze could get it done by himself, they were very, very wrong. If 23-24 had the potential to be their best season ever, well, 24-25 was their best season ever. Injuries still left their mark. Eze was out for the whole month of November and only made 1 start in February. Up till then, his tally of 13 goal contributions in 23 games was impressive, but nothing we hadn't seen, and Palace were only 13th in the table. But around that time, Glasner said one thing that I believe explains what came next. Eze can be a bit of an overthinker. I've told him, in practice, 99 times out of 100, you score. It's not that you can't do it, it's something in your mind. And whatever that something was, it came unstuck. A month after his comeback, Eze scored his first ever goal for England. For some perspective, he was the first Crystal Palace player to score for England since 1976. That's how absurd it was that he had reached that level without a move to a major team. Regardless, then, almost 27 years old, it clicked. 5 days after that, he showed up against Fulham in the FA Cup quarter-finals and proceeded to glide past everyone and bang one in from outside the box, before assisting the second. The following week, he was assisting 2 against Brighton, then scoring against City, and with a month left in the season, he scored in 5 games in a row. A volley straight from a corner against Arsenal, the opener in the FA Cup semi-finals, the equalizer against Forest, 2 against Tottenham, and above all, the only goal in the final of the FA Cup. Only twice had Crystal Palace been there and had never come victorious. Matter of fact, they had no major trophies to their name. But now, they had defeated Guardiola's Man City. They had qualified to the Europa League. As Eze said, this is what dreams are made of. But the dream wasn't over. Back for the next season, playing the Community Shield against a Liverpool team that had just won the league with a 10-point lead. Twice they went behind and twice they tied it back up, going into a penalty shootout and taking their second major trophy in 3 months after going their whole history without one. And now that was done, guess who came sniffing around? Tottenham. And this time, it was all agreed. But after this 14-year journey since being dropped by Arsenal's academy, Eze just couldn't get himself to do it, not yet. So, just to quiet his brain, he called Arteta directly with one question. He just needed to know there was no chance, that he hadn't wasted it. But the surprising thing was that there was. Havertz had just gotten injured that morning, and it all moved so fast that his transfer was being announced on the news before Tottenham themselves had been made aware their target had been hijacked. So fast that 2 days later he was already at the Emirates Stadium, nervously waiting his presentation, muttering the lyrics of a Sampha song to himself. Let it all work out. And it did. His first league goal was named Goal of the Month, and his second, third and fourth came against Tottenham. Just as Thomas Frank asked, who's Eze in the pre-match conference, pretending not to know him. How ironic is that? After so much history with both clubs, the moment anything materializes, he gets his first career hat-trick in his first North London derby at 27 years of age. The first hat-trick in the derby since 1978. And, of course, across the sea, Olise was putting his own 10 out of 10 performance just as the 2 former rejects were bound to meet again, now in the Champions League. I guess sometimes you really gotta just let it all work out.